The Personal MBA by Josh Kaufman. Introduction. Imagine for a moment, it's 2005. Harvard Business School, the absolute pinnacle of business education, is in the middle of a massive scandal. A group of 119 applicants, brilliant young minds on the verge of securing a spot in the world's most prestigious program, have been caught. They found a way to hack into the admissions website to see if they'd been accepted before the official letters went out. The media went into a frenzy. Debates raged. Are these people just fundamentally dishonest, or does business school somehow teach this kind of behavior? But one person, a brilliant marketer named Seth Godin, saw it differently. He looked at these 119 rejected applicants and said that Harvard wasn't punishing them. Harvard was giving them a gift. A gift of $150,000 in tuition and 2 full years of their lives back. He wondered aloud, why would anyone spend all that time and money when they could get a better, more practical education simply by reading 30 or 40 great books and getting real-world experience? Now, at that very same time, a young man named Josh Kaufman was working a high-flying job at Procter & Gamble, a position normally reserved for top MBA graduates. He had decided to skip the expensive degree and was on his own self-education journey, devouring every business book he could find. When he saw that post, something clicked. He realized he wasn't just learning for himself, he was creating a roadmap that could help anyone. And so, the Personal MBA was born. A project that started as a personal reading list has since sold nearly 1 million copies and has been translated all over the world. It's a book built on a single, powerful, and almost revolutionary promise: that you can master the art of business, understand how to build a company from scratch, and achieve incredible success without ever setting foot in a business school classroom. What you're about to hear is the distillation of that wisdom. By the end of our time together today, you will have a complete mental framework for understanding how every single business works, from your local coffee shop to Apple. This isn't just a summary. This is a foundational education in the timeless principles of business. And it won't cost you a single dollar in student loans. Let's begin. Book summary. So, where do we start? We start by dismantling a myth. The myth that business is complicated. That it's some kind of secret language spoken only by people in expensive suits who carry leather briefcases. Josh Kaufman tells us that this just isn't true. He felt it himself, that feeling he calls business angst, the fear that you don't know enough. The certification intimidation that says you need a fancy degree to have a valid opinion. And the imposter syndrome, that nagging feeling that you're in over your head and someone's about to find you out. He argues that these fears are normal, but they are fundamentally unfounded. Because at its core, every business, no matter how large or small, is simply a repeatable process that makes money. Everything else is a hobby. Let me say that again, because it's the foundation for everything that follows. A business is a repeatable process that makes money. And that process, he discovered, is made up of just 5, and only 5, core functions. They are the universal operating system of commerce. Value creation, creating something that people actually want. Marketing, getting noticed and building demand. Sales, turning interested prospects into paying customers. Value delivery, giving your customers what you promised. And finance, bringing in enough money to make it all worthwhile. Take away any one of these 5, and the whole thing falls apart. If you don't create value, you have a hobby. If you don't attract attention, you have a flop. If you don't make sales, you have a non-profit. If you don't deliver on your promise, you have a scam. And if you don't bring in enough money, you'll soon be out of business. That's it. That's the whole game. The rest of this journey is simply about understanding how to do each of those 5 things exceptionally well. This isn't about memorizing 1 million different methods. As the old saying goes, methods are many, but principles are few. The person who grasps principles can successfully select their own methods. The person who tries methods, ignoring principles, is sure to have trouble. This is a book about principles. Kaufman calls them mental models, simple concepts that help you understand how the world works. He was deeply inspired by a man named Charlie Munger, the billionaire business partner of Warren Buffett. Munger, who never went to business school, built his fortune on a latticework of mental models from different fields, psychology, physics, economics, and used them to make brilliant business decisions. That's our goal today. To build your own latticework. To give you the fundamental models you need to see the world of business with total clarity. So let's start at the beginning. Part 1 of any business: value creation. Before you can build anything, before you can market anything, before you can sell anything, you have to create something people actually want to buy. This sounds so obvious, but it's the single biggest reason most new businesses fail. They fall in love with their idea, their product, their creation, without ever stopping to ask if anyone else cares. This brings us to the most important mental model in the entire book. Kaufman calls it the iron law of the market. It is cold, hard, and completely unforgiving. It states, if you don't have a large group of people who desperately want what you have to offer, your business will fail. It doesn't matter how brilliant your team is. It doesn't matter how amazing your product is. Markets that don't exist don't care how smart you are. Think about the Segway. In 2002, the inventor, a genius named Dean Kamen, poured over $100 million into developing this self-balancing scooter. He was convinced it would revolutionize transportation, just like the car replaced the horse and buggy. He expected to sell 50,000 of them every single year. But after 5 years, they had sold a total of 23,000. The product was a technological marvel. But the problem was, nobody really wanted one. It was a goofy-looking, expensive alternative to walking or riding a bike. The massive market he expected simply wasn't there. He had violated the iron law. So how do you avoid that trap? You have to understand what people truly want at a fundamental level. It's not about guessing. It's about understanding human nature. Kaufman points to what he calls the 5 core human drives. These are the deep, primal urges that shape almost every decision we make. First, there's the drive to acquire. This is our desire for things, status, power, and influence. Any business that promises to make you wealthy, famous, or influential is tapping into this drive. Second, the drive to bond. We are social creatures. We want to be loved, valued, and feel like we belong. Restaurants, dating services, social clubs, they all thrive on our need to connect with others. Third, the drive to learn. This is our innate curiosity. We want to understand the world. Schools, books, workshops, they all sell the satisfaction of our curiosity. Fourth, the drive to defend. We want to protect ourselves, our loved ones, and our property. This is the drive behind alarm systems, insurance companies, and martial arts schools. And fifth, the drive to feel. We crave new experiences, pleasure, excitement, and entertainment. Movie theaters, amusement parks, sports teams, they all sell feelings. Every successful business taps into one or more of these drives. The more drives your offer connects with, the more deeply people will desire it. So when you have an idea, don't just ask, is this cool? Ask, which core human drive does this satisfy? Now, once you know what people want, you need to decide how you're going to give it to them. Kaufman outlines 12 standard forms of value. Think of these as a palette of business models you can choose from. You don't need to invent a new one. 1. A product, a physical, tangible item. You make a widget, and you sell it for more than it costs to produce. Simple. 2. A service, you provide help or assistance for a fee. You're a doctor, a designer, a consultant. You're trading your skill for money. 3. A shared resource, you build something once that many people can use, like a gym or a movie theater, and charge for access. 4. A subscription, you offer ongoing benefits for a recurring fee. Think Netflix or a magazine. This is powerful because it creates predictable revenue. 5. Resale. You buy something from a wholesaler and sell it to a retail customer at a higher price. This is how almost every store you shop at works. 6. A lease. You own an asset and let someone else use it for a period of time for a fee. Think renting a car or an apartment. 7. Agency. You market and sell something you don't own on behalf of someone else, and you take a commission. A real estate agent or a literary agent does this. 8. Audience aggregation. You get the attention of a specific group of people, and then you sell access to that audience to advertisers. This is how magazines, TV shows, and most websites make their money. 9. A loan. You lend money and collect it back over time with interest. 10. An option. You offer someone the ability to take a specific action for a fixed period of time in exchange for a fee. A movie ticket is an option. It gives you the right to see a movie, but you don't have to. 11. Insurance. You take on the risk of something bad happening in exchange for a series of payments. 12. Capital. You purchase an ownership stake in a business and share in the profits. You don't have to pick just one. Most great businesses combine several. A gym is a shared resource, but you pay for it with a monthly subscription, and they might also sell you products like protein shakes and offer services like personal training. This mixing and matching is called modularity. But here's the key: no matter what you choose, your idea is just that, an idea. It's worthless on its own. The most important job of an entrepreneur is to test that idea in the real world as quickly and cheaply as possible. You don't need to spend years in a secret lab building the perfect thing. Kaufman argues that stealth mode is one of the worst things you can do. It cuts you off from the most valuable resource you have: feedback from real customers. This is where the concept of the iteration cycle comes in. It's a simple, scientific process for making anything better over time. You watch, you ideate, you guess, you act, and then you measure. It's a loop. You build a simple version of your idea, called a prototype. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be real enough for someone to understand it. A perfect example of this is Fitbit. When the founders, Eric Friedman and James Park, had the idea for their wearable fitness tracker, they knew building the hardware would be incredibly expensive and risky. So what do? The very same day they announced the idea to the world, they put up a simple website with some computer renderings of what the product would look like, a description of what it would do, and a button to pre-order one. They didn't have a single finished device. They were selling a promise. This is a technique called shadow testing. And it's brilliant. Orders started pouring in. That real customer demand gave investors the confidence to put $2 million into the company to make the Fitbit a reality. They tested the iron law of the market before they had a product. They proved people wanted it by asking them to pay for it. The best form of feedback you can ever get is someone pulling out their wallet. This first version you sell is called the minimum viable offer. It's the simplest possible thing that provides enough value for a customer to actually make a purchase. As Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, famously said, "If you're not embarrassed by the first version of your product, you've launched too late." Once you have that minimum viable offer and people are buying it, you just keep iterating. You keep listening to feedback, making small improvements, and making the offer better and better over time. This is how great products and great companies are built. Not in a single flash of genius, but through 1,000 tiny improvements. Now, having a fantastic product that people want is the first giant leap. But a brilliant product in a dark room is invisible. If no one knows you exist, no one can buy from you. This brings us to the second core function of every business: marketing. Marketing is not about tricking people or being annoying. Kaufman defines it simply as the art and science of getting noticed by people who are likely to be interested in what you have to offer. In today's world, the most valuable and limited resource is not money. It's attention. Every single day, thousands of things are competing for your attention. Emails, social media, work, family, the TV show you want to binge. To get someone's attention, you have to earn it by being more interesting or more useful than everything else competing for that same sliver of their time. And this is where the idea of remarkability comes in. Seth Godin, in his classic book Purple Cow, uses a perfect metaphor. If you're driving through the countryside, a field full of brown cows is boring. You'll ignore it. But if you saw a purple cow, you would stop the car. You would take a picture. You would tell everyone you know. A purple cow is remarkable because it violates your expectations. The best marketing is built right into the product itself. Think about the Vibram 5-finger shoes, those weird, glove-like shoes that look like a frog's feet. They're not just shoes, they're a conversation starter. When people wear them, strangers stop them on the street and ask, "What are those?" Every customer becomes a walking, talking advertisement. That's why the company's sales tripled every year after they launched, without any mass-market advertising. Their product was remarkable. It was a purple cow. But you don't want to be remarkable to just anyone. You want to be remarkable to your probable purchaser. This is the specific type of person who is perfectly suited to what you're offering. Harley-Davidson doesn't try to appeal to everyone. Their probable purchasers are middle-aged men with disposable income who want to feel a sense of freedom and rebellion. So their marketing focuses on leather jackets, handlebar mustaches, and the roar of an engine. They're not trying to sell motorcycles on the Oprah Winfrey Show, because that's not where their people are. Attempting to appeal to everyone is a recipe for appealing to no one. You have to focus. Once you know who you're talking to, you have to find a way to break through their preoccupation. At the beginning of any marketing process, your prospect isn't thinking about you. They're thinking about what to have for dinner, or a deadline at work, or a problem with their kids. To get their attention, your message has to be more interesting than whatever they're currently focused on. The best way to do this is by provoking curiosity, surprise, or concern. This is where a powerful hook comes in. A hook is a single, memorable phrase or sentence that grabs attention and communicates the core benefit of your offer. When Apple launched the first iPod, they didn't talk about megabytes of storage. That's tech speak. Their hook was simple, emotional, and powerful. 1,000 songs in your pocket. Everyone immediately understood the benefit. That hook grabbed attention, and the quality of the product did the rest. A great hook, a remarkable product, and a clear understanding of your probable purchaser will get you noticed. But how do you turn that notice into a relationship? You ask for permission. This is another big idea from Seth Godin. Instead of interrupting strangers with unwanted messages, like spam email or junk mail, it's far more effective to offer people something of value for free, and then ask for their permission to follow up. Maybe it's a free guide, a helpful newsletter, or a sample. By giving value first, you earn their attention and their trust. And once you have their permission, you can communicate with a group of people who have already raised their hands and said, "Yes, I'm interested in what you have to say." You're no longer a stranger. You're a welcome guest. And with every message you send, you should have a clear call to action. You can't assume people know what you want them to do. You have to tell them. Visit this website. Enter your email address. Buy this product now. A clear, simple, and obvious next step is essential. Finally, the most powerful marketing of all is building a great reputation. A reputation is simply what other people think and say about you when you're not around. You can't control it directly, but you can influence it by consistently delivering on your promises and making people glad they chose to do business with you. A strong reputation is the most effective marketing there is, because it makes your happy customers your best salespeople. Getting attention is great. Building a reputation is even better. But none of that pays the bills. At some point, an exchange has to happen. A prospect has to pull out their wallet and become a customer. This is the third core function of business, sales. Now, The word sales makes a lot of people uncomfortable. We picture a pushy, fast-talking used car salesman trying to trick us into buying something we don't want. But Kaufman argues that real sales is the exact opposite of that. It's built on a foundation of one simple thing: trust. No one will give you their hard-earned money unless they trust that you can deliver on your promise. And you won't deliver your product or service unless you trust that they're going to pay you. Without trust, a transaction simply will not happen. So how do you build that trust? You do it by finding common ground. A successful sale isn't about convincing someone to do something that's not in their best interest. It's about finding that overlapping area where your interests and your prospects' interests align. They want a problem solved, and you have a solution that works for them at a price they're willing to pay. The best salespeople don't see themselves as sellers, they see themselves as assistant buyers. Their job is to help the customer make an informed decision that's right for them. This approach, which Kaufman calls education-based selling, is incredibly powerful. Instead of pushing for the sale, you invest your time in making your prospects smarter. My wife, Kelsey, used to be the sales manager at the most prestigious bridal salon in the world in New York City. The average price of a gown there was thousands of dollars. To make that sale, she had to help the bride and her family understand why it was worth the price. She would take the time to explain the difference in fabrics, the craftsmanship of the beading, the importance of the construction. She was educating them. By the end of the appointment, they weren't just buying a dress, they were buying a piece of art they fully appreciated. And because she had invested in them and earned their trust, they were happy to buy from her. This brings us to the psychology of a sale. There are several powerful mental models that explain why people say yes. First is reciprocation. As human beings, we are wired to want to pay back favors. If someone gives us something, we feel an urge to give something in return. This is why car salesmen offer you a coffee or a soda the moment you walk in. It's not just hospitality. Accepting that small gift creates a tiny psychological obligation. Studies show that people who accept the free coffee are more likely to buy a car and agree to less favorable terms. The most effective salespeople are often the most generous. They give value, they give help, they give advice, and that generosity often comes back to them in the form of a sale. Next is commitment and consistency. Once we make a small commitment, we feel a powerful urge to act consistently with it. Salespeople use this by getting you to say yes to small things early on. You're looking for a safe car, right? Yes. And good gas mileage is important to you? Yes. Each yes is a tiny commitment that makes it harder to say no later on. You've already established a pattern of agreement. Then there's social proof. When we're uncertain about what to do, we look to the actions of others to guide us. This is why customer testimonials and reviews are so powerful. When you see that hundreds of other people just like you have bought a product and loved it, it tells your brain that it's a safe choice. It reduces the perceived risk. Authority is another one. We are trained from childhood to comply with figures of authority: parents, teachers, doctors. This is why Sanka Coffee hired the actor who played Drive, Marcus Welby, on TV to be their spokesman for decades. He wasn't a real doctor, but he played one on TV, and that was enough to give him an aura of authority that sold millions of dollars worth of coffee. And finally, there's scarcity. We want what we can't have. The fear of losing out on an opportunity is a powerful motivator. This is the psychology behind limited time offers or only 3 left in stock. That scarcity creates a sense of urgency that overcomes our natural tendency to wait and think about it. But even with all of this, sometimes the biggest barrier to a sale is simple risk. The customer is thinking, what if this doesn't work? What if I waste my money? This is where the most powerful sales technique of all comes into play: risk reversal. Risk reversal is where you, the seller, take on most or all of the risk of the transaction. The most common form is a money-back guarantee. Think about a betting company that offers a 100% money-back guarantee for a full year. You could sleep on a mattress for 364 days, decide you don't like it, and get a full refund. That sounds insane for the company, but what it does is completely eliminate the customer's fear of making a bad decision. With the risk gone, they're much more likely to buy. This is sometimes called the take the puppy home strategy. A pet store knows that if they let you take an adorable puppy home for a trial period, that puppy is almost never coming back. You'll fall in love with it. By removing the risk of the commitment, they make the sale. Yes, a few people will take advantage of a generous guarantee. But the huge number of extra sales you'll make by eliminating your customer's risk will more than make up for it. So, you've created something valuable. You've gotten people's attention. You've made the sale. You're done, right? Not even close. Making the sale is the beginning of the relationship, not the end. Now you have to deliver on your promise. This is the fourth core function of business: value delivery. A satisfied customer is the best business strategy of all. And the key to a satisfied customer lies in one simple equation. Kaufman calls it the expectation effect. It goes like this: quality equals performance minus expectations. Let me explain. A customer's perception of quality isn't about how good your product is in some absolute sense. It's about how well it performs compared to what they were expecting. If performance is better than their expectations, they'll be delighted. If performance is lower than their expectations, they'll be disappointed, no matter how good the product actually is. The online shoe company Zappos built an empire on this principle. They promise free shipping and delivery within about 5 business days. That's their official promise. But what they often do, without advertising it, is upgrade that shipping to overnight delivery. The customer orders shoes on Monday, expecting to get them on Friday, and they show up on their doorstep on Tuesday. That surprise, that over-delivery on their promise, creates a moment of pure delight. It turns a happy customer into a fan for life. Zappos understands that it's more valuable to surpass expectations than to meet a higher, advertised promise. The foundation of delivering value consistently is understanding your value stream. This is the entire set of steps, from the very beginning of your creation process all the way to the final delivery to the customer. Let's take something as simple as a bottle of Dawn dish soap. That process starts with raw materials being delivered to a factory. They're mixed, stored in vats, poured into plastic bottles, labeled, boxed up, put on pallets, stored in a warehouse, loaded onto a truck, delivered to a distribution center, put on another truck, delivered to a store, unboxed, and finally put on a shelf for you to buy. That's a lot of steps. And at every single step, something can go wrong. The more you understand your own value stream, the more you can work to make it more efficient and reliable. Companies like Toyota became legendary by obsessively analyzing their value stream and making millions of tiny improvements over the years. They focused on creating predictability. When a customer buys from you, they want a predictable experience. When you open a can of Coca-Cola, you expect it to taste the same every single time, no matter where you are in the world. That uniformity, consistency, and reliability is the bedrock of a quality offering. As your business grows, you'll need to decide how to deliver your value. There are 2 basic ways: a direct-to-user distribution channel, where you deliver the value yourself, like a barber giving a haircut, or an intermediary channel, where you partner with someone else, like a cookie company selling its products through a grocery store. Working with intermediaries allows you to scale your business, to grow and serve many more customers than you could on your own. A product is scalable because you can duplicate it. You design it once and make millions of copies. A business model, like a Starbucks store, is scalable because you can multiply it. You perfect the system for one store, and then you can open thousands of them. This ability to scale is what amplifies the impact of small improvements. A tiny change that saves a fraction of a cent on a single can of soda can save a company like Coca-Cola hundreds of millions of dollars a year, because that saving is amplified across billions of cans. That's the power of amplification. But as you build these complex systems for delivering value, you have to be aware of a danger. Kaufman calls it the paradox of automation. The more efficient and automated a system becomes, the more crucial the human operator is. If a fully automated factory starts making a tiny mistake, that mistake will be multiplied thousands of times per minute. It takes a skilled, attentive human to notice the error and shut the system down. So, paradoxically, the better the automation, the more you need a smart human watching over it. And this leads to the irony of automation. The more reliable and automated a system is, the less the human operators have to do, which means the less attention they pay. They get bored. And when they get bored, they're more likely to miss the one moment when a critical error occurs. The way to combat this is with checklists and standard operating procedures. Even the most expert airline pilots, with decades of experience, use a detailed checklist before every single takeoff and landing. Not because they're forgetful, but because they understand that in a complex system, it's easy to miss a simple step, and the consequences can be catastrophic. So, you're creating value, marketing, selling, and delivering. The machine is running. But how do you know if you're actually winning? How do you know if you're making progress? This brings us to the fifth and final core function of business: finance. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Finance, spreadsheets, numbers, boring. But Kaufman simplifies it beautifully. Finance isn't about complex formulas. It's just about watching the money flowing into and out of your business and asking a simple question: are we bringing in more than we're spending? The most important concept in all of finance is profit. It doesn't matter if your business makes $10 million in a year if it costs you $10,001 to run it. Business is not about what you make, it's about what you keep. Your profit margin is simply the percentage of each dollar in revenue that you get to keep as profit. The higher the margin, the more money the business keeps from each sale. To have a profit, you must practice value capture. This is the process of keeping a certain percentage of the value you create. If your service saves another company $1 million, and you charge them $100,000, you're capturing 10% of the value. The trick is to capture enough to make it worthwhile for you to stay in business, but not so much that the customer feels like they're not getting a good deal. And this leads to a beautiful and freeing idea: sufficiency. You don't need to build a billion-dollar empire to be successful. You just need to reach a point where your business is bringing in enough profit to make it worthwhile for you to keep going. Paul Graham, the founder of the famous startup incubator Y Combinator, calls this being ramen profitable. You're making enough to pay your rent, keep the lights on, and eat. You're not rich, but you're self-sustaining. At that point, you've won. Everything after that is a bonus. To understand if you're on the path to sufficiency, you need to look at a few simple financial reports. Don't be intimidated by them. The cash flow statement is the most important one. It's just like your checking account statement. It shows money coming in and money going out. Is the number at the end of the month bigger than the number at the beginning? If so, you're in good shape. Cash is king, because you can have millions in promised sales, but if you don't have cash in the bank to pay your bills, you're out of business. The income statement, also called a profit and loss statement, shows you if you're actually profitable by matching your revenues with the expenses it took to earn them. And the balance sheet is a snapshot in time of what your business owns its assets and what it owes its liabilities. You don't need to be an accountant, but you do need to understand these basics. They are the gauges on your business's dashboard. Once you understand them, you can start making smart decisions. There are only 4 methods to increase revenue. That's it. You can. 1. Increase the number of customers. 2. Increase the average transaction size, sell more to each customer. 3. Increase the frequency of transactions, get customers to buy more often. 4. Raise your prices. Every revenue growth strategy is just a variation of one of these 4. And the easiest of these is often raising your prices, if you have pricing power. This is your ability to raise prices without losing all of your customers. The more unique and valuable your offer is, the more pricing power you have. The ultimate financial metric that ties all of this together is lifetime value. This is the total profit a customer will bring to your business over the entire course of your relationship. A customer at a lemonade stand might have a lifetime value of $1. A customer for an insurance company could have a lifetime value of tens of thousands of dollars. The higher your average customer's lifetime value, the more you can afford to spend to acquire a new customer. This is your allowable acquisition cost. It's the secret math that explains why a company like Proactive can spend millions on celebrity-endorsed infomercials to sell a $20 product. They know that once they have you as a customer, you'll likely stay with them for months or years, and your lifetime value is hundreds of dollars. They're happy to lose money on the first sale to get a customer for life. So far, we've covered the 5 core functions, the what of business: value creation, marketing, sales, value delivery, and finance. But there's another layer to this: the who. Businesses are built by people, for people. And to succeed, you have to understand the most complex, frustrating, and fascinating system of all, the human mind. And that starts with understanding yourself. Kaufman dives deep into practical psychology, and it starts with a concept he calls caveman syndrome. Our brains and bodies are not optimized for the modern world. We are running ancient hardware in a brand new operating environment. 100,000 years ago, our brains were wired for survival. To seek pleasure like high-calorie food, to avoid pain like being eaten by a lion, and to conserve energy. This explains so much about our modern struggles. Why is it so hard to resist a donut? Because your caveman brain is screaming, sugar, energy. We might not eat again for days. Why do we procrastinate? It's conservation of energy. Unless a task feels urgent and necessary for survival, our brain's default setting is to be lazy. Why do we fear public speaking more than death? Because to our caveman brain, being rejected by the tribe was a death sentence. One of the most powerful of these ancient wirings is loss aversion. Psychologists have found that we feel the pain of a loss about twice as strongly as we feel the pleasure of an equivalent gain. Losing $100 feels way worse than finding $100 feels good. This is why the fear of losing what you have, a steady job, a comfortable salary, often feels more powerful than the potential gain of starting something new. It keeps us stuck. We are also wired with biases that cloud our judgment. Confirmation bias is our tendency to look for and pay attention to information that confirms what we already believe, while ignoring anything that challenges it. Insight bias is that feeling of, I should have known, after something goes wrong, even though it was impossible to know at the time. So how do you work with this ancient brain of yours instead of against it? First, you have to master your own productivity. The myth of multitasking is one of the most destructive ideas in the modern workplace. Your brain cannot focus on 2 things at once. It's just rapidly switching between them, and every switch comes with a cost. Kaufman calls it the cognitive switching penalty. It's why you can feel exhausted at the end of a day of multitasking without having accomplished anything meaningful. You've burned all your energy just switching contexts. The solution is to pursue monoidealism, a state of focusing on one, and only one, thing at a time. This is also known as a flow state. You can get there by eliminating distractions, setting aside large, uninterrupted blocks of time for important work, and using techniques like the Pomodoro, where you work in focused 25-minute sprints. You also need to be ruthless about prioritizing. At the start of each day, identify your 2 or 3 most important tasks. These are the tasks that, if you get them done, will make the biggest difference. Do them first, before anything else. But you can't build anything great alone. You have to work with others. And that requires understanding social dynamics. The deepest principle in human nature is the craving to be appreciated. To work well with others, you have to make them feel important and safe. You do this with what Kaufman calls the golden trifecta: appreciation, courtesy, and respect. When you lead others, don't micromanage. Give them commander's intent. Don't just tell them how to do something. Tell them why it needs to be done. Give them the goal, and they will surprise you with their ingenuity in reaching it. And be aware of the pitfalls of group dynamics. Communication overhead is the reason that adding more people to a team often makes it slower, not faster. The number of communication lines grows exponentially with each new person. The ideal team size is small, between 3 and 8 people. Finally, let's zoom all the way out. Every business, every team, every human being is a system. And your business exists within even larger systems: a market, an industry, a society, an economy. To truly master the art of business, you have to learn to think in systems. The most important law of systems is Gall's law. A complex system that works is invariably found to have evolved from a simple system that worked. You cannot design a complex system from scratch and expect it to work. You have to start with something simple, prove that it works, and then build upon it, letting it evolve over time. This is why the minimum viable offer and the iteration cycle are so powerful. They honor Gall's law. Every system has flows of resources, and places where those resources collect, called stocks. And every system's performance is limited by its weakest link. This is the theory of constraints. If you're building cars and you keep running out of engines, it doesn't matter how fast the rest of your assembly line is. The engines are your constraint. To improve the whole system, you must focus all of your energy on fixing that one bottleneck. Once you do, a new constraint will appear somewhere else, and the process of improvement continues. Systems are also governed by feedback loops. There are balancing loops, which keep a system stable, like a thermostat in your house. And there are reinforcing loops, which amplify an effect, like interest compounding in a bank account, or a viral video spreading across the internet. And here, we come to one of the most powerful concepts for any entrepreneur: the critical few, also known as the 80-20 rule. In almost any system, a small minority of the inputs will produce the vast majority of the results. 20% of your customers will likely generate 80% of your revenue. 20% of your work will produce 80% of your most valuable accomplishments. Your job is to identify that critical 20% and focus your energy there, while ruthlessly eliminating the rest. Timothy Ferriss, author of The 4-Hour Workweek, found that out of 120 customers, just 5 of them accounted for 95% of his revenue. By firing the rest and focusing only on those 5, he dramatically increased his income and slashed his working hours. Finally, understand that all systems tend towards disorder. This is entropy. Left alone, things fall apart. Your business requires constant maintenance, attention, and improvement just to stay where it is. And because the world is fundamentally uncertain, you can never predict the future. The best you can do is build a system that is resilient, able to withstand shocks and adapt to change. Be more like a turtle than a tiger. A tiger is powerful and fast, but if it gets injured or its food source disappears, it's done. A turtle is slow and not very sexy, but its shell makes it incredibly resilient. It can survive almost anything. You build resilience by having low debt, low overhead, cash reserves, and multiple lines of business. You build it by creating fail-safes, backup systems for your critical processes. And you discover your system's weaknesses through constant stress testing and experimentation. The only way you learn is by trying new things. This is the experimental mindset. There is no perfect plan. There is no final destination. There is only the process of trying, learning, and improving, one day at a time. This journey of self-education, of building something valuable, never really ends. And that's the beauty of it. There is always something new to learn, always a new path to explore. The journey itself is the reward. Commentary. As we come to the end of our journey through the Personal MBA, I find myself thinking about that young, ambitious 17-year-old listener I imagined at the beginning. Someone who feels that pull to create something, to build a life on their own terms, but sees the world of business as a fortress with walls too high to climb. What Josh Kaufman has done with this book is hand you the keys to the front gate. He hasn't just summarized a business education, he's demystified it. He's taken this giant, intimidating concept called business and revealed that it's not some dark art. It's a craft. A craft built on a small set of timeless, understandable, and deeply human principles. The most powerful lesson, for me, isn't about finance or marketing. It's about empowerment. It's the radical idea that you don't need anyone's permission to learn, to build, or to succeed. You don't need the stamp of approval from a prestigious institution. You just need curiosity, a willingness to experiment, and a solid understanding of the fundamentals. This book is the ultimate antidote to imposter syndrome. After reading it, you realize that the language of business isn't foreign at all. Value creation is just helping people. Marketing is just getting noticed. Sales is just building trust. Value delivery is keeping your promises. And finance is just making sure you bring in more than you spend. You've been doing these things in small ways your whole life. What's also striking is how much of the book isn't about business in the traditional sense, but about psychology and systems thinking. Kaufman understands that a business is a human system, and to run it well, you have to understand how humans think, how they make decisions, and how they work together. Concepts like loss aversion, confirmation bias, and the core human drives aren't just business tools, they are life tools. They help you understand yourself, your friends, and the world around you with greater clarity and compassion. So, how can you start applying these ideas today, right now? First, start thinking like an entrepreneur by looking for problems. Look for hassles. Kaufman talks about the hassle premium. People will almost always pay for you to solve something that's a pain for them. What are the small, everyday frustrations that you or the people around you experience? Every hassle is a potential business opportunity. Second, pick one of the 12 forms of value and run a small experiment. You don't need to quit school or your job. Can you offer a service like tutoring or graphic design? Can you resell something you find at a thrift store online? The goal isn't to get rich overnight. The goal is to make your first profitable transaction. That's the moment a project becomes a real business. Start small, honor Gall's law, and iterate. Third, and perhaps most importantly, start your own personal MBA. You don't need a formal curriculum. Just follow your curiosity. When a concept from this summary sparks your interest, maybe it's the 80-20 rule, or the psychology of scarcity, go deeper. Read the original book on that topic. Watch a documentary. Try to apply it to your own life. The journey of self-education is the most rewarding adventure you will ever embark on. That was a summary of the Personal MBA by Josh Kaufman. We've explored the core ideas today, but I hope you feel, as I do, that we've only just scratched the surface. A summary is like looking at a map of a beautiful country. Reading the book is like taking the trip yourself. It's in the quiet moments of reading, when a story or a simple phrase connects with your own experience, that the real learning happens. This summary is your map, to help you decide if the journey is right for you. If anything we've talked about today has sparked a fire in you, I urge you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning, it's an experience that can genuinely change the way you see the world and your own potential within it. The link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this summary valuable and it gave you a new perspective, please do me a small favor and hit that like button, and subscribe to the channel. It tells the algorithm that we're creating something of value, and it ensures you won't miss our next deep dive into another life-changing book from the billionaire's bookshelf. Let's keep learning and growing, together.